All right, we are coming back here, Tri-City Sports Now, and we've got a legend on the line. Greg Dennis really needs no introduction to any ETSU fan. The Buccaneers are retiring his number 11 tomorrow when they take on arch rival Chattanooga. He was for a long time, before Tim Smith, the all-time scorer at ETSU, and in fact, his presence, this should be said, his presence at playing for the Atlanta Hawks in a preseason game drew more people to the mini dome, 14,000 and change, than they've ever had before. And for that matter, it was more people than ever attended an ETSU football game, even when they had basically an unlimited amount of tickets to sell playing at BMS. So that's how popular Greg Dennis is, and really how great he was. Played in 4 NCAA tournaments. And Greg Dennis, it's wonderful to talk to you. When did you hear that ETSU was going to do this long overdue honor and retire your number?
Well, actually, it was just a couple of weeks ago on a kind of a bittersweet occasion, actually. For those, I don't know how well known it is, but we lost a close Buccaneer of ours from that freshman class of ours. Alvin West had passed away, and they honored him that Saturday night a couple weeks ago at the game. We had pretty much, a bunch of the guys from my class and my era came in to honor him and be there at that game. And Coach Forbes invited us to the shoot-around that morning. And when they circled up, huddled up at the end of the shoot-around that morning, and he let me know then that they will be retiring my jersey after looking up and seeing Mr. and Calvin's up there in the rafters already. So that's when I found out just a couple weeks ago.
Well, it's a long overdue honor, Greg Dennis, and I did know Alvin West, as a matter of fact, had a class with him at ETSU, so very familiar with what was going on there at the time. Actually sat next to him, had many conversations with Alvin West circa the early going to mid-90s and such. I did want to ask, one of the things that we've kind of crossed paths before, Greg Dennis, and I want to see if you by any chance remember this. It was, I guess now 8 years ago, and ETSU had finished second in the Atlantic Sun Conference and was about ready to try to defend their tournament title. They'd been to 2 straight NCAAs, but it just seemed like nobody in Johnson City cared. There was a real down time in terms of enthusiasm for ETSU athletics. And I wrote a story for Bleacher Report that got thousands of reads and many likes. And it was, why is Johnson City, Tennessee out of love with ETSU? And really it was a statement of their administration at the time. And what I remember is that you actually commented on it. And you spoke of the Buccaneers' involvement in the community and their popularity during your era in the late 80s and the early 90s. And I've never had the chance to say thank you for that support, but I really think that that was the cherry on top, if you will. And if my story did any public, influence, if you will, for the changes in administration that came, and I'd like to think that there was, your endorsement of that story, I think, was what would make it possible. And I really have never had the chance to thank you for that. But again, thank you. And I think that, some of what we're seeing here, maybe we can pat ourselves on the back. So you've got a role in today's ETSU as well as yesterday's. So, again, no real question there, but thank you again. I should ask, you mentioned that you had come back to ETSU for the funeral of Alvin West. What is Greg Dennis doing in 2019?
Well, since the basketball stopped bouncing for me, so I was fortunate, like you said, I bounced around for about 8 years or so after I left East Tennessee State playing basketball. I came back home and been in financial services ever since. I'm a senior financial advisor for a regional brokerage right now, and I've been doing that for about 20 years now. It's just something I love. I got kind of into it when I was playing basketball professionally, and making sure I took care of what money I did make and looking for investments and that sort of thing. And when I retired at the end of 99, 2000, came back home, mean? So I've been doing that ever since.
Well, I'm very impressed with that. Perhaps I'll call you up on that as well here to get more of a business sense, if you will. We're talking to Greg Dennis, the at one time all-time leading scorer at ETSU. Now, you came to ETSU in 1987 when the Bucs were down. When you left, they were a nationally ranked program and winning NCAA tournament games. You have a lot to do with that, but what was it that attracted you to ETSU back 32 years ago?
Well, it was basically I came on pretty late as a high school senior. It had a lot to do with Coach Les Robinson being from St. Albans, West Virginia. Basically, the story I was told is that when I think Coach had been there a year or two before our class came in, but a friend of Coach Robinson saw me at the state high school tournament here in Charleston and called Coach Robinson to let him know and pretty much told him to get somebody up there to see me. And Coach Dave Hanners, was the one that actually recruited me. Actually, he's responsible for that outstanding freshman class wholeheartedly. But he came and recruited me. I was recruited by pretty much all the universities here in the state, but really didn't fit my need as far as what I was looking for to go, such as Marshall and West Virginia University. But it was the right distance away from home for me. Nice side school. It was Division I, and with their situation at the time, it was an opportunity for me to come in and play right away as a freshman, which was a big deal for me. West Virginia University wanted me to go to prep school. They sent a lot of good kids to Fort Union military school. They did back then, and Marshall had kind of they had been in the headlines a lot, not for necessarily good reasons as well. So I wasn't too thrilled about Marshall as well. But so East Tennessee State came along, and they were just coming off probation, pretty much starting with a clean slate, and they gave me an opportunity to come in as a freshman at a Division I program and play right away. So. Then also at the time I was actually had the aspirations for an engineering major, and they had an outstanding electrical engineering program, which I started in for a couple years before I changed majors. Okay,
that's great. What was it that caused you to change majors? My mother's was a professor. She just retired at ETSU, so we're always interested in the academic side. What was it that said, wait a minute, money and not electricity?
Well, actually, it's funny, though, because how I got down that road, I mean, just as a kid growing up, I was a tinkerer, just loved to tinker with things and take things apart. And there was always a radio or a television or some type of electronic apart in my household growing up. And actually, funny, I have a close brother-in-law now who's an electrical engineer as well. But that's how I got started, piqued my interest. But with being a college athlete, the major is hard within itself, just being a normal student. That's a difficult major, a lot of the subjects and things. And we missed a tremendous amount of class playing basketball as if it wasn't difficult enough. So I decided about a year and a half, 2 years in, that I would change majors and do something that I could finish and get a degree in, and I would come back and finish my engineering degree when I wasn't playing ball. So at that point, I'd been in athletics all my life, of course, and I went into the physical education program, which is ultimately what I got my degree in, and intended to go back to school to get my engineering degree, but I ended up playing basketball after that. So
sure.
Never had that opportunity. But so I got the physical education degree. The financials, like I said, I had an interest in the financials services industry a little bit. I've always been fascinated with the markets and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But what really got me is that when I signed on with my agent out of college, he did not provide any financial services for his clients or whatnot. That was pretty much left up to me. And so, like I said, in the process of learning about it and looking for investments and trying to take care of what money I was making, that's kind of how I got interested in it. Managed my money the whole time I was playing and invested. Tried to do wisely and things like that, and been doing it ever since I stopped.
Well, that's great. Because we hear so often about athletes who, have mismanaged their money and such. But looking at your professional career, the second half, I got to ask, I mean, coming back to Johnson City with the Hawks, all the people there, really to see you one last time, how did that rank in terms of highlights in your professional career, Greg Dennis?
It was definitely one of the highlights. I mean, I wish I could have stayed with them a lot longer, but there's a couple organizations in the NBA I was with long enough to have a cup of coffee, I guess you could say. But that was quite quite a highlight of my career coming back. And I don't know what played in the background as far as the scheduling of that game and things like that. I don't know if it was a coincidence, but a lot of NBA teams play preseason games with different campuses and things like that. But it was certainly ideal for me to be able to come back to Johnson City and see the place that I played, familiar with the dome and that sort of thing, and be embraced by the people of Johnson City once again. I mean, it was one of the pinnacles of my career for sure.
There has never been an ETSU basketball game that drew more than the 14,000 that were there. There's never even been an ETSU football game that has done that. And remember when 2 years ago, I guess it's now 3 years ago, ETSU in 2016 played Western Carolina at BMS. I mean, you really had unlimited potential for attendance there. I wanted to ask, I know you're what was supposed to be your senior year, you were injured. I think you actually did a little bit of broadcasting on the ETSU radio network that year, but I'm talking about 90 to 91. That was actually the year, with memory serves, where ETSU was nationally ranked. Are there any regrets, or is it that, wait, I put everything that I had into my senior year when I came back, and then we won the NCAAs? But have you ever looked at what could have been in 91 if you were on the court?
I think about it all the time because ironically, it's funny. That's the best record of the 4 years that we had without me. That's just a testament to the rest of the guys and the type of talent that we had on that team. Because if memory serves me correct, that was the year that we had the best record and was ranked the highest with me sitting out. So that I don't know if that says a whole lot about me or a whole lot about the team. But I always wonder, we've talked about it numerous times, we talk about it just about every time we get together, what could we accomplish and what could we have done, Mr. Calvin, Marty, Major Alvin, that whole crew collectively in our senior year together, seeing how they, looking in hindsight, what they did do without me. Mm-hmm. What role could I have played in pushing us farther up the ranks, and what could we actually accomplish? I can only sit here now, in hindsight, and just say, I mean, the sky would have been the limit. We could have went as far as, anyone in the country.
But was that motivation against Arizona? Because I got to tell you, I remember ETSU coming back for their fourth time, and I know that the deck is stacked against mid-majors, but Greg Dennis, by the time the fourth year came around, I said, well, could this team actually win a tournament game? You did. And what kind of a motivation was sitting out 1991 for 92 and winning that NCAA tournament game against the Wildcats?
Well, part of the motivation is that we started the season out as a goal, and it was grilled. I mean, it was enforced in us every single day. That was our motto, basically, for that senior season, was 4 and more. We wanted the 4th consecutive Southern Conference championship. We knew we had to win our tournament to even get to the tournament anyway, so that was the first primary goal. But we wanted to do more and go beyond what we did the previous 3 trips to the tournament. We was always knocked out the first round. We were not satisfied with just getting there and getting bounced the first round. Our objective was to get back to the tournament and go farther than just the first round.
So, and I know that the second run after that victory, and I mean, that was, like I said, it was something special when ETSU, first time since '68, won an NCAA tournament game. But although it was not in the cards to beat the Fab Five, you scored 31 against them. I know the Fab Five love to talk trash. What do you remember about those battles? It seemed individually you gave as good as you got. But do you remember anything, and if you have to clean it up, okay, but do you remember anything that was said under the boards in your last game at ETSU?
I don't remember any specific comments as far as the game goes, but That whole starting five, that whole you talking about some freshmen. I mean, they were way ahead of their time as far as maturity and talent and just an awesome group of guys. But that was part of how looking back on it now, that was always my strength as far as basketball goes. I always wanted to see bigger guys, heavier guys, taller guys, because I predicated my game on just being a lot quicker. And I played a lot on the perimeter. So basketball-wise, it fell right into my wheelhouse, so to speak, because Juwan Howard and Chris Webber, traditional bigger men that are used to guarding post players in the post and that sort of thing. And when you bring them out on the floor, that's when I have my advantage. But there's a lot. I mean, like Major's one of them that stands out in my mind. Major and Mister, they have these outstanding memories. Alvin was one of them as well, of picking out particular games and instances and things that my memory is not as well as sharp as theirs as far as that goes. But it was fun. It's a memory that I'll have for the rest of my life. I get a lot of compliments from it. But to be able to do that, I'm very proud of.
Well, 2,204 total points at ETSU. Really, I thought a nice free throw percentage, 78% for a post player. That's not bad at all. And as I said, retiring, or I shouldn't say retiring, but graduating as the all-time leading scorer in ETSU history. And Greg Dennis was the guy that ETSU won the NCAA tournament game with. Like I said, Mr. wasn't on that team. People have forgotten that, I think. But yeah, you were that year an unquestioned leader and have taken ETSU to farther than they have gone ever since. So for all ETSU fans, I mean, this is a long time coming, retiring number 11. My last question to you is, I remember Tom Chilton, they took it down from the rafters for Kevin Tiggs. Would you ever give up number 11 now that it's going to be retired for an incoming recruit?
Well, it's funny. I don't know. I haven't really had any. I don't know if they're actually retiring the actual number or just the jersey itself, from what I understand. Because it's funny, though, the games that I mentioned earlier when we came in for Alvin, to honor Alvin at the game, we were at the shoot around that morning, and Jerome
yeah.
I told him personally, I said, just make sure you do right by that number 11 you have on your chest there, buddy, and everything will be fine. But I'm sure whoever puts it on, it'll be represented well. Coach Forbes has done an outstanding job, and I really, I thank him and all the persons involved. Whoever was responsible for thinking that I am worthy of being of getting such an honor. But Coach Forbes has been really great as far as connecting, particularly my class, with the present and bringing us back home, welcoming us back home, and making us feel a part of the ETSU family again. And he's done hopefully he can bring the program back to the levels that we had when I was there.
Well, he's off to a pretty decent start. He's already the first coach to win 24 or more games in 3 consecutive seasons. And although there hasn't been an NCAA tournament victory or a national ranking like you guys enjoyed, that was one thing that the modern-day Buccaneers have accomplished, and it wasn't such a bad thing at all. I mean, let's face it. But yeah, we're gonna have to ask Jerome Rodriguez about that. I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan growing up, Greg Dennis, and I can tell you I know that they took number 20 off the back of Richie Hebner to retire it for Pie Traynor, and they took number 4 off the back of Mike LaValliere to retire it for Ralph Kiner. So we'll have to see how they handle that with Jerome Rodriguez. I'm intrigued. Tri-City Sports Now, we shall return after this. Thank you very much, Greg Dennis.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
And